We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. Today I'm here with Amy Tiemann of TM1 Properties. Now, Amy and I were talking prior to the show, and as I do with everybody, I'm sure you have figured that out by now. I talked to everybody prior to the show because I'd like to find out just a little bit more about what they've got going on so that we could figure out our angle of questions. And so she's going to talk with us, and I told her that I was personally interested in learning more about scaling a private equity firm. Now, we're all familiar, I feel like, unless you're new to this business, we're all familiar with like dipping our toe in and kind of figuring out the things that we need to do to get started. But the actual part of scaling is something that we rarely touch on, simply because it seems like by the time people get to where they're scaling, they're really scaling, they don't have time. There's a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily cover from that angle. So, Amy, how are you today? Welcome.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We're so glad you're here, and we're glad and we that we can hopefully learn more about what you've got to offer and learn more about you. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the real estate business?
So, back in 2003, I started a construction company with my ex-husband, or my husband at the time.
Okay.
And we were building retail stores. And by 2014, we were in 16 states,
Okay.
building retail stores across the United States. Along that journey, in 2008, we started real estate investing because every general contractor becomes a house flipper pretty much at some point.
That's right.
So we started house flipping, and then we got into single family rentals in 2008, like right after the recession. Started finding homes to buy, and then 2010 got into multifamily. And when we got into multifamily, we initially did limited partner investments,
Okay.
but we were also the general contractor on the job. So we came in, put a little bit of money in, but we also were there day one doing takeover, doing demo, doing all the renovations and value add multifamily. So that was kind of how we started in it. And then quickly we got to be where we were sponsoring, syndicating deals, doing that kind of stuff. And I got divorced from my husband in 2017, and I just kept going. So I just
Awesome.
and kind of scaled from there.
Not
So,
awesome that you got divorced, but awesome that you kept going. And because a lot
yeah,
of times it can take the wind out of your sails, especially when you
it's
go through.
not fun. Yeah.
I had somebody prior to my divorce had told me, and I didn't pay much attention to it until after when I was going through it, was divorce is like a death in the family almost, and sometimes it's we see people that deal with deaths in the family in all sorts of different manners, and when you're divorced, but you're able to I guess, for lack of a better term, lick your wounds and keep rolling. It's tough.
Yeah. It is. Everybody doesn't understand. You're right. You relate it to a death. You grieve,
Yep.
like you go in through an emotional thing, and you have to push past that and keep going. You have to push past that and keep working. And you have because now you're a single. I was a single mom and not getting the best support from my ex-husband. I had kids to feed, and I had stuff to take care of, and I had to
Yep.
make sure they had a place to live and I was a full-time real estate investor. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
had no choice. I was not going to go back and go get a job and get a W-2 because it's not what I wanted to do. It was not where, I knew I wanted to do real estate investing. So I figured it out.
Sure.
And that's what I did. So,
Yeah, and that was the way, you know, when I was going through my divorce, it was one of those scenarios where it wasn't that I wasn't getting support, but then all of a sudden, without
much time to figure it out to start with, I was all of a
Yes.
sudden a single father half the time, and
Right.
which shared custody was what we both wanted, and so on. But at the same time, I still had to go to I had still had to figure out from being uh, full time father half the for half of the
Mhm.
relationship to a full time father half of the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where then I was responsible for 100% of their needs half the time.
Yeah.
It was a lot, and so
Yeah.
kudos to you for sticking through that and coming out on the other side. And hopefully you're on the other side now. We didn't really talk
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
but yeah. So you just kept rolling post divorce, and how does that look? Uh, how does that look right now?
So I'm probably I've doubled my assets in since 2017. I have some really great partners. That was probably one of the best things that ever. I mean, like he was not the nicest dude, so it was a good thing because it forced me to figure it out.
Yep.
Right, I couldn't rely on anybody else. It was me.
Yep.
And when you're staring at yourself and you're the reason why your kids can't go to soccer camp,
Yep.
well, then figure it out, right?
Yep. Oh
So
man. Yeah.
I wasn't getting really a whole lot of support from my ex-husband. So, like, my daughter is now a junior at Purdue University, and
Oh
I'm the
wow.
one that has been paying her tuition. Me.
That's
That's it.
fabulous. And
Yeah. So,
I can guarantee I got a buddy that went to Purdue, and I can assure you that that's not a cheap
yeah.
venture. But
I graduated from Purdue too, so I'm excited that I can figure out a way to
oh,
make sure that she
Boilermakers, man, I really was disappointed in
Boilermakers.
their show up at the tournament this year. I
Oh,
really,
and everybody else, like, who thought Kansas was going to win? Like,
yeah,
really?
yeah.
I know, but
I was super disappointed. I just
I
thought
know.
that big guy. Anyway, uh,
Oh, I know, I
Di-
know. When we lost to the Cinderella team,
we'll have to start a sports section of this podcast so we can all talk
exactly.
about our teams. But so yeah,
Yeah.
so all right, so you've made it somewhat, and are
Hmm.
working towards
Hmm.
your daughter graduating college. And so
Yep.
what I want to talk a little bit about moving towards the syndication business specifically.
Okay. Okay.
When you what has been your door count gather, I guess, if you will, from date of divorce through beginning to figure out how to scale? Like how fast did it grow, and then how many years was involved?
So I'm almost graduating out of syndication now.
Okay.
Um, I did syndications for a long time, and that's how I did everything as in syndication.
Okay.
And then I'm now starting a fund. I have a multifamily fund that we're starting, and now also I'm starting a real estate investment trust. So I'm kind of off having different vehicles for people to invest in.
Sure.
Uh, and so um, I hate to do this to you. I'm at home, and my dog is a pain in the ass, and so I have to let him
All right,
outside.
we'll cut here, and then we'll cut, and I'll
Okay.
have
All right.
Clark will take it out. No problem.
All right. Cool. All right. Come on. Come on. Actually, he's a pain in the ass. I just have to leave the door open. He just wants access to the outside. Don't ask me.
I
Okay.
got you. I understand.
All right. Okay. So syndications are they're a different animal. So when you're doing the syndication, you basically have to become a full time capital raiser,
Yep.
and which is what I do now. So I have built out a team to help me do some of that stuff. So I have a marketing person, I have a social media consultant, I have an investor relations person, I have all these different things. Initially, when you first start out, you don't have that luxury.
Yep.
And so you are doing all of it yourself.
Yep.
And and I suck at marketing. So I had to find a way to figure out how I could pay a social media consultant. Like
Yep.
I had to and sometimes what you do is you get your first deal and you still eat cans of green beans
Yep.
because you have to make sure that you can scale your business so that eventually you can eat caviar, right? Like
That's
you
right.
just put the money back into your business. So you save, you do all those things. And so because you have to have those key components. And if they're not there, you'll never be able to sustain or scale.
Yeah, and
So
that's honestly so when I realized that a fund was my what was my vehicle of choice, if you will.
Hmm.
That was because then you're able to focus on the investor's needs without,
Yep.
uh, uh, again, being pulled in a different direction to change a light bulb and then be pulled in another different direction to fix the rails on a step. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So there's like two, I call them two hamster wheels. So there's the deal hamster wheel. You're always chasing deals, right?
Yep.
And then there's the money hamster wheel, and you're always chasing money.
Yep.
And so one or the other, one or the other. But they're both two full-time jobs. So you either have to, some people say, well, I just want to do one or the other. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't.
Yep.
But that's okay. But you develop skill sets around both areas. So there's the deal people who can deal, they can find deals, they can manage deals and do all those great things. And then there's the people who are really good at capital raising. I would say the deal people are probably more prevalent than the capital raising people. It's
Yep.
hard to raise money. It's not easy.
Yep.
It takes a lot more than people think
Yep.
to raise capital. I mean, you can get in those guru groups and you can raise and I did and I'm not going to say I don't. I do. I participate. I don't participate as much in as many, but you can join those groups, and that's just, it's really joining a network of people that are interested in real estate investing and have money. So therefore it's really easy to raise capital that way, right? Because
Yep.
you're in a group that's, but some of those groups have weirdo rules that are dumb, and they're like, oh, you only can invest inside this group and you can't invest outside the group or whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
So I don't have that. I don't join groups that are like that.
Now, the
I'll
specific, I want you to define groups. I mean, because that's such a, and there's a lot of people out there, especially the listeners, who are saying, okay, hey, what groups is she talking about? And I don't guess you
yeah,
necessarily have to go into names, but that could
yeah,
be beneficial to somebody.
yeah. So like the education and mentoring groups, like yeah, I'll throw one out. I'm not in this group. Full disclosure, Brad Sumrock runs a group.
Okay.
Things like that, where they're education and mentoring around real estate investing. And they have sponsors like myself who will throw out deals to the group, and therefore the group will have those chances to invest. So they're building up those relationships with people so that they have those private deals and they're in that group. That's what
Yep.
they're for. That's generally, but it doesn't, that's just a group. But you can join a real estate investment association. You can join like any sort of group where there's like-minded people, like a mastermind group, where there's like-minded people interested in real estate investing, and you find a deal and you go tell those people about it.
Yeah.
And then if they've got cash, they'll throw money in the deal, right?
Yeah.
So it's a similar concept, but some of them are more set around education and mentoring, so they can help you meet that, because the SEC wants people who are investing in syndications to be sophisticated,
That's right.
right? So they have to have some sort of education. So instead of you educating all of your investors, those groups will do that
Yeah.
for you. So you will pay to be in that group because then you've got the sophistication part covered,
Now
right?
that's for the
So
506B, right?
yeah,
Then,
506B.
then of
Yeah.
course you step
Yeah,
into
if you're
the,
doing a 506C offering, you don't need to worry about that because they just have to be accredited and you have to show that they're accredited.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And that's what we primarily do is 506C.
yeah,
It just seems to
yeah,
weed out a lot of the other stuff, I guess, if you will, because for one, I'm not a huge, there's a lot of these mentors and a lot of these folks out there who are huge proponents of saying, well, go to friends and family. And that's why I think the B was always called kind of the friends and family model. And
yeah.
I am personally anti friends and family simply because I I remember one time I owed my mother. I was actually going through my divorce, and I owed my mother $15,000
Yeah.
because I was paying for attorneys and had a mound of stuff going a bunch of different directions. And not that my mother ever asked for it or ever really cared that I owed it to her, but I personally felt just slightly different at family functions. Like, hey guys, let's
Mhm.
go have a beer. Well, I owe mom 17 grand, so I better hang back. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so,
no, I know. Money
not that a
in the
syndication is necessarily you owing somebody, but
yeah,
personally, I just don't like the mix of family, friends, and money.
yeah,
I just think it's a way for things to go sour really quick. So, with that being said, I'm not at all saying that it doesn't fit some folks' models, but it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mean to jump in there and
No, no, you're fine.
take
And
that
so
over.
a lot of 506B is so how we build, we're doing a 506B offering right now. It's just because I network so much and I've built a
Sure, sure.
pre-existing relationship with
Yeah, if
people.
you
So
have a
it's not
bank of
simply,
investors that you've
yeah,
worked with and that you know and have a prior
yeah,
relationship with, I mean,
yeah.
that's the way for a B to be beneficial for
Yes,
sure.
exactly. So that you got to, but you got to understand that when you go out and start capital raising, you got to understand your job is not to sell an investment.
Yeah,
Your job is to network your butt off so that you can build your investor list.
that's
That's
right.
your job,
That's right.
right? So that when you do have an investment, if you want to do a 506B, then you have that bank of investors there that can come into your deal. And if you don't, then you have to go the 506C route, and that might cut out half your investors
Yeah.
because not all of them are accredited,
Well,
right?
let's talk a little bit about gathering investors, if you will, because it seems like
Okay.
that seems to be something that you have um, a pretty strong way to go about gathering investors. So start with give the listeners maybe one or two points on how to start gathering investors, and again whether that be accredited or non-accredited or just sophisticated, but
Yeah.
give us some steps in how that looks and how you do that.
So my whole investment relations, investment lead generation systems have evolved, especially in the last 5 years.
Okay.
I will say that it's much easier now to kind of do some of that, but way back in the day, I was using Excel and email, like
Yeah.
just going through my email. It was awful. Like, and that's, but there were no investor portals. Everybody and their brother has an investor portal now, right?
Yeah.
Those they didn't exist when I was capital raising. So you had to do these, really jank methods of like trying to keep track of everybody, and it was awful.
Yep.
Like it was absolutely awful. But now you've got investor portals, you got CRMs, you got, all these great things that you can do to build out your systems, and you use your website and your social medias, and you do all those great things to build out your investor list. And you use text messaging apps and
Yep.
like all of these different things that you use to kind of curate your list. Like once you start building them up, but initially when I first started, I didn't really like great stuff. So now, I mean, I would network a lot, and it was business cards, and then I would have this like little business card Rolodex thing, and I would put them all in an email group. And then I would send them out, hey, I got a deal,
Yep.
and then I learned, I'm like, well, they forgot about me because I haven't been consistently, in front of their face, right? It's
Yep.
all marketing. That's
Yep.
what it is. And so then I'm like, okay, I need to start creating newsletters, and then I need to start either that or have a ton of deals or whatever it might be. And so that whole chain of how you curate investors, you find them, do all those great things. That whole side of my business has evolved, especially in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like just it kind of blew up, and because it had to,
Yeah.
like I was chasing bigger and bigger deals, I had to have a bigger and bigger investor pool. And so a lot of it is you putting yourself out there. I do. I try to focus on three things now. I go to larger conferences where there's, higher level conferences than I ever have been before. I was hanging out in the spaces where people like me were, and I really don't need to be there.
Yeah,
Right? I need to be.
I've realized that myself. I was like, for instance, the other day I was trying to come up with an audience on one of the social media platforms to target, and the first thing I typed in was real estate investor, and I was like, wait a minute, I want somebody that may be interested in real estate investing, but I wonder sometimes how those target like I more want somebody retail. Like I want an engineer, for instance,
Right.
that makes good money, that is
Right.
slightly interested, or maybe is saying, "Hey, I'd like to maybe to self direct some of my funds away from the stock market into a real estate
Right.
deal."
Right.
And so, yeah, that was a huge point you just made there. And I think that's a mistake that so many of us make all the time. And I
Right.
used to notice it a lot in Facebook advertising, especially was where I would get ads on Facebook, which I don't use it anymore. This is way back when, but I would get ads on Facebook for like real estate agents who were advertising their house. And I was
Mm,
like, they screwed up their targeting, because why are they advertising their house to me? I mean, obviously I could show and sell it, but I've got other means to find it if need be. So
right.
yeah, you want to be with like-minded
Sometimes
people,
you
but
just, yeah, sometimes the marketing campaigns are so unsophisticated. You're just like throwing stuff up on a wall and seeing what sticks, right? Because
yeah,
you don't know.
yeah,
You don't know who you're targeting.
yeah,
And that's the key thing when you're initially doing any sort of marketing is you really need to hone in on, they call it the avatar, right? Who is your investor? Like
yeah,
if you were going to go target an investor, who is it? And accredited investor doesn't count because you don't know if they're accredited, right? So then you're like everybody will target doctors and people target doctors because you know those high income earners are likely to be accredited. So
yeah.
engineers, software developers, doctors, dentists, all those kind of things.
And I'll
You
tell
can
you
start getting
one thing that
titles.
fit with me with all of those professions you just mentioned, outside of the potential they were accredited, is they're system oriented people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
systematic oriented people. And I think that changed my vision a little bit when I started looking through the lens of saying, okay, what professions out there are the most systems oriented? Well,
Mm-hmm.
basically every one of them you just mentioned, on into agricultural scientists
Yep.
and biological science. All of those people are are constantly dissecting systems of some kind.
Right.
And to me, what you and I do every day is a different version of a system, but it's a system that at the end of the day, just it pumps money out to them. You know what I'm saying? And they don't
Yes.
have to see, think, or hear about it. They just get the check.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but scaling a private equity firm. So you've got the whole marketing component, but at some point you have to be able to understand where your revenue is coming from,
Yeah.
right? It's usually in fees, right? So you're initially going to be cash strapped. So you're not going to be able to hire the people. So how do you go? But no one's going to invest with you if you look like a solopreneur.
Yep.
That's So you have to build this team so they understand that they're buying expertise. You have to build your expertise in certain ways.
Yep.
Like they need to see because they're buying the horse, they're buying the jockey, not the horse. So they're kind of buying the horse too, but they're buying more on the jockey.
Yep.
So you got to show that. And how do you show that if you can't pay, make a payroll? Right.
Mm,
So lots of times you just give up partnership. You give up parts of your general partnership and you partner with people and go, look, I can't pay you payroll every other week, but I can give you ownership stake in certain things, right?
yep.
I can do that. And people will do that gladly. If they especially have got another job and they don't need a paycheck, right? But
Yep.
they want to be able to invest in real estate deals. And if they give some of their sweat equity away to get that, real estate deal in the thing, not a bad gig, right? So
Well, and I think
that's how.
that could be a good to your point there, starting out with an individual syndication and giving up percentages of those GPs
Mhm.
to keep you from giving up, as you progress and start moving
Yeah,
towards a fund. Then you
right.
can have all of those pieces. You're almost syndicating the job out, I guess, if you will, along the way.
Kind of. Yes.
And then that way, when you get to your fund, you're the owner and you've got your team built, but you've got your team is being paid through other means, basically.
Right. Right. Through the fees, right?
Correct.
So that's how you can pay your team, right? So now you've got fee revenue coming in.
Yeah.
And that's always a conversation with an investor. They're always like beating you up on your fees, and I'm like, dudes, like these fees
Yeah.
this is not covering like all the expenses
Yeah.
I'm coming out of here.
Well,
Like
and
just knock it off.
you and I could sit, you could turn around right there, turn this computer off, turn around right there and watch TV and be at a break even and just not do anything.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
why? And that's the big thing, our fees. I'm just like, if it comes to me, I'll justify them a little bit by saying, hey man, we're taking care of a lot of accounting here, and let's look at the upside. I mean, even after the fees, you're still looking at potentially this. I
yeah. I
mean,
know, right? Like,
let's
shut up.
let's be real. I mean, we've got resources that are spread out there, and that's like the real estate commissions when I was on the sales side. There's
I
so
know.
many agents that go into listing meetings and they feel like they're already scotched up ready to justify why they're going to charge 6%. And somebody says to me, "What's your commission?" I say 6%, and that covers all your marketing, and that covers everything from
Yeah,
beginning to end.
yeah, same
And
thing.
that's kind of the end of my discussion, because other than that, it's like, hey, do you go into your boss every day? You're working at such and such factory or such and such store. Do you go into them every day and justify why you need a paycheck? I mean, it's not any different.
Yeah. So, and most of the, to your point, most accredited investors don't even ask those questions. They
Well,
don't.
yeah, they don't want to get. They're going to know the accredited investors most of the time are going to invest with
Mm-hmm.
you to test. Okay,
Yeah.
then they're going to look at their overall return after it's done, and they're going to say, "Oh, hey, yeah, man, that guy did really good, and his fees were reasonable. Let's go back." Or they're going to say, "Man,
Mm-hmm.
I'm out. I'm not doing another one
Yeah,
with
I
you.
know.
That everything was too high." And that's
Yep.
basically the beginning and the end of what happens when you get that kind of stuff involved, and the fees, and so you have to be real careful. But you're right. I mean, people don't the people that start feeing you to death, or asking about your fees to death. And I'll tell you something else that I've realized about that, and I mention this on my podcast all the time. Not all investors are created equal. Okay. And I
Yeah.
realized that early on because, again, of my real estate background. You get somebody that says, "Hey, I want to sell my house." Cool.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
Then they either become a troublesome seller who wants to nitpick everything and who wants to micromanage everything. And I've actually let sellers out of listing contracts because I'm like, dude, listen, I know how to do this job. I promise.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
need we don't need you crowding up in here because you're going to make it less efficient. So
Yeah. I think so, and that goes to all of that goes to building trust, right? So,
exactly.
and sometimes sometimes you, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what investors think sometimes, but I don't have to take your investment, right?
All right.
So if you're going to be a pain in the ass up front, I'll just say, see ya. I can get another investor, right?
Yep.
All good. But so it's all the game you play. I mean, real estate's easy. People are hard. I mean, real estate is just real estate. You go through
It
the
is.
transaction. You have sellers you have to deal with. You have investors you have to deal with. You have all these great things you have to deal with. But if you're trying to scale, you have to get really good at investor relations, and you have to get really good at reading people and knowing people and understanding it. And to get through deals like real estate transactions, you have to be really good at being proactive and not waiting for things to blow up. And you get really good because I was an old GC, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could predict something happening before it was going to happen, so I would mitigate it before it would happen,
Yep.
right? So you're always trying to do that mitigation thing because this could happen wrong, and this could happen wrong, and this could happen wrong. So let me go mitigate that before it so it doesn't happen,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
A lot of that stuff, those skills translate into being a real estate sponsor because you're doing the same thing all day long, right? You're like, okay, well, this could happen over here. So let me make sure we're doing this and make sure we're doing that and like all those great things so that you can kind of scale. And that's a part of it. That skill takes a while for people to learn. I mean, once you get in it and you've done it a while, you either do that or you die.
That's right.
Like you have to learn that skill or you're no longer going to be a real estate sponsor.
Yeah.
Because investors all talk, and this is a really tiny industry, and the only thing that you have is your reputation.
That's
And
right.
if you aren't paying your investors,
Yep.
you will quickly develop a reputation that's not good, and then for some reason that spreads like wildfire, and
And
you know
that blacklist is hard to get off of.
it is
I've seen
it's
so many
very hard
people
to get
go
off
on
of.
it, and you're right. I mean, you just do the investors right, and do the
Exactly.
right thing when it comes to pushing stuff back and saying, hey,
Yep.
because at the end of the day, it's not your money, it's their money, and
Mm-hmm.
they could be making money somewhere else with it if not with
Yeah.
you. So tell us just real quick. We're kind of running a little bit out of time here, but tell us real quick a little bit about your fund and what that's
Mm-hmm.
either looks like or is going to look like if it hasn't launched yet. But what is it? What's going on
It's
there?
yeah, it's launching really soon. So it's a multifamily fund focused on workforce housing because that's where my experience is in workforce housing. So it's going to be a lot of the stuff that I do is obviously a value add play. So because
Okay.
I have my construction experience, but it's like value add on crack. So I like not only is it a normal value add play, but generally I redevelop sites. So I will
Okay.
go in and go, oh, that's a stupid use of footprint, and I'll like scrape and rebuild. Or I will, if there's, I always look for properties where there's extra land so I can add units, right? So
Yep.
I've got a deal in Corpus that we've already acquired. We've got one site that had 8 adjacent lots, and we're platting it all together so that we can double the size of the unit count there, right?
Wow.
So we're doing stuff like that. And then my deals in Houston, same thing. They got adjacent land, but then one of the sites is going to get completely redeveloped because it doesn't make sense. The footprint doesn't make sense, and we need to put self storage in the front, and we got room to put more multifamily in the back. So once we're all done, the site makes more. I like best use of sites. So
Yep.
stuff like that is kind of what we'll do. So it's really like I say, value add on crack. I mean, it's value add, but sometimes, I try to make sure that the investors are still going to get paid throughout so that they don't feel like it's a true development play
Yeah.
because development sometimes you don't get paid for 2 years,
Yeah,
right?
but that allows you to service the debt because investors are debt. So
Yeah.
yeah, so when you have something like that can service the debt,
Hmm.
and then you can can market that as, hey, we're going to do this and then it's going to be this,
Yeah.
but you're not going to ever starve, I guess
Yes,
is the main
exactly.
thing. So
Yeah.
wow, that's
Investors just want to see the mailbox money, right? They want to see it, even if it's small, they want to
right.
see that they're getting something.
Yep.
So I tell all of my folks, like, don't count on anything for 2 quarters. I got to get in there. These are all value add plays.
Yeah.
Everybody lies. Every seller lies to you.
Yep.
We got to get in there. We got to figure it out. And once we kind of figure it out, know where we're at, and kind of can we execute the plan we thought we were going to execute? And then we can kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, we can. Okay, let's go. And
Yeah.
then we try to figure that out in the first month, and then you got to give me a couple months to kind of sift through all the losers and all those
Well,
great
and when
guys.
the investors, I feel like when the investors know that up front, they
Yeah,
have a choice to invest with
yeah.
you under this plan or take their money and go somewhere else.
Well,
And
yeah, but then
so
they all get amnesia. Like it's like
I
I
know.
tell them this up for I'm like over transparent. I'm like Miss Sunshine. I want to give you so much stuff, but then I always get these.
Yeah.
I always get it's always one. There's always one. Like you'll go, hey, this is the plan,
Yeah.
and I am not going to distribute to you anything for 2 quarters. Don't even ask me. It's not happening. I got to get in there. I got to figure it out. I got to do all these stuff, and
Yeah.
and I tell them that, and then 2 weeks later, I'm going to get, hey, so when did distribution start?
Yeah.
you know, and it's really kind of funny, but it's fine. And they're all good about it. I was like, look, go back to the plan.
Yeah. Go back
And
and
I
look at
think
what we went through when we
like,
had
and
our
that's why I
call.
have an investor relations manager. So she's really sweet. And she goes, okay, back in the plan, we said that we weren't going to do anything for the first 2 quarters. And then every investor update, I always include when are distributions going to start,
Right. Big
especially
letters.
initially. I'm like, this
Right.
is going to start here. Like, hello,
Yep.
right? But you have to be that good sponsor and operator that once you start distributions, you better not pull back.
That's
You
right.
better, like, you can't, don't overcommit to distributions initially because and for some reason 1 quarter you can't make them. Oh, then that's a bad place to be as a sponsor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you just
Well,
got to
and I,
do things.
again, the I just yeah, and sometimes and I always try to tell people that and when you're involved as you were involved in a divorce, I was involved in a divorce. Life happens, things happen,
Yes, things
buildings
happen.
catch fire,
Yes,
tenants move out. I mean, things
yes,
happen, and if we're
yes.
not, and if we're not openly, I guess like you said, transparent about just saying, hey, listen, this is our hopes, this is our dreams, but pad that by a little bit and then go from there. But
Hmm.
That's
Yep.
one that's a good, all good points, especially for new folks coming in. That just because somebody says, "Hey, I want to invest with you," doesn't mean that then you need to feel like you have to tell them everything they want to hear. Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
tell them what they don't want to hear, and that gains more trust than just telling them everything they want to hear,
Yeah.
because these folks are not ignorant. They know that, hey, if nothing else, it says in all black and white and everybody's PPMs and so on and so forth, that this is a risky business. This is
Yeah.
something that, although we hope and pray and do everything possible to not go backwards, there's a chance, right?
Yes.
So,
Exactly. So
all
you try
right,
to, yeah. So my fund is part value add, part deep value add, things like that. We're talking about redevelopment, and it's also development. So it's all workforce multifamily, but it's we're going to do value add acquisitions like that, and we're also going to do new ground up development too. So that's the
awesome.
fund. My advisory board's really good. I've got my chief legal counsel is on the advisory board. I'm there. I've got an architect. I've got somebody who's a lender. I've got a realtor. That's our advisory board, and I've got somebody who is owns over like $500 million worth of real estate. They're all on
Sure.
my advisory board and in different asset classes.
Yep.
And then I've got, so the fund is not just for my developments, but I've got several key development partners
Yep.
that we have an arrangement that will help fund their deals, and they've built over, I don't know, 50,000 units. So those partners we will partner with too. So it's not just me. So that's the fund. So the fund is set up to do developments. It's fund to do value add acquisitions, all in workforce housing, partly because and why I like workforce housing over like Class A housing or affordable. Affordable is just crazy. Like I don't want to deal with government, so just saying. And
Yeah,
Class A,
it adds another layer for sure.
yeah, yeah, Class A is that'll last for a little bit a while, but workforce housing is stable. Workforce housing, there is not enough of it, and it's very difficult to build. We've figured out there's some construction technology that we can actually make it pencil, that we can do a new development and it can be in that 80 to 120 80% or 120% of the average median income for an area. Like we're working with
Wow.
different sorts of technologies, modular building, and all of these developers have done that. They all done modular. They use SIP
Well,
panels
they
or
were to a
different
point where
things.
they had to either
Had to,
figure it out or something else was gonna. I mean, it just wasn't gonna work.
yeah,
I mean, for
exactly,
workforce stuff especially. So,
yeah,
let me just real quick. I want to ask one more question about your fund, and then we'll kind of
yeah.
get ready to wrap this up. But is your fund one that does capital calls, or do you say, hey, somebody wants to invest 100 grand, they shift it to you right immediately, and then you start paying pref? How does that look?
Yeah, so it's set up. We have ongoing projects already. So if we didn't have ongoing projects, it would be set up to where we would do a capital call. But
Okay.
right now, we've got stuff going on,
Yep.
so it would be immediately, and they would get a pref.
So that
So
that tends to change depending upon
yeah,
what you've
yeah.
got going on, and then of course,
Yeah, but I've already got three projects in that this fund could participate in.
sure.
And I've got more in my pipeline. I'm going next week to go look at another development site, a total workforce housing development site in Colorado. And then we've got another one in Florida. And then we have a lot in Texas.
Yep.
So yeah. And then some even like I'm crazy, like some in California
Ooh,
because California has a housing crisis too. But
they
the
do.
only reason, and everybody looks at me like, Amy, you're crazy. But the only reason I would go to California is because I'm betting on the jockey because they've been there for 12 years. They know exactly how to manage property. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to make it pencil. They know how to make it work.
Well, and I've
That's the only reason
oftentimes
I do
said
it.
that if you're going to do New York or California, you need to do New York or California. You don't need to do so if you've got somebody that is specifically
Yes.
California, that
Yes.
knows California. It's
Yeah.
when people get in trouble in California, it's when people like myself are like, "Oh, hey, that looks like a good deal," when in fact
Yep.
it's there's a sinkhole
Yeah.
under it and it's getting ready to
Yeah.
float off into the ocean and nobody knew it.
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
nobody
Yeah. So
nobody outside of
yeah,
California knew it. Everybody in California
these
knew it.
guys have they've got like been doing it for the last 12 years, and they have 16 properties in California, and
Yeah.
they know how to manage, and they know how to,
Yep.
all the rules and regulations. So that's the only reason I'm betting on the jockey on that one. And they're good
Yep.
people. Like
Yep.
they're like me. They're sunshine
Sure.
people, right? They're
Sure.
more transparent. They're upfront with you. So I like those folks. So that's, so those are some of the projects we got going on right now. So the fund would, it could be set up as either what, PPM's like the vaguest thing since sliced bread. It's just like so vague. But generally we can start accepting money right away. We can start paying a pref right away because we just got projects we can allocate it off to.
Sure,
So
sure, sure.
yeah,
Yep, makes sense. All right,
yeah.
so we always ask a couple questions at the end of every episode. There's no right or wrong answer. It's basically just what you see as the answer. So, what is the best book that you've recently read or are currently reading?
The best book I've recently read is called Capital Raising by Richard Wilson.
Oh
So
wow. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Well, good, and I'm sure that that thing is filled with all kinds of of just what seems to be like
yeah,
common sense things if you're on the
yes,
inside looking in,
yeah.
but from the outside looking in, if it's filled with just tons of information. So good.
Yeah,
Um,
it's great because he's worked with lots of family offices, and so it's geared towards that. It's
yeah,
geared towards capital raising for family offices.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's a good book.
All right. And what is the best? What is the dream? Your dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
My dream vacation is so my family on my dad's side. He's about to be 80, and we had this plan prior to COVID,
Yep.
but I have traced back where my family came from
Okay.
and back to like the 1500s. And it's in this little town in Western France, or this little region in Western France.
Okay.
And I was going to take him and all of my kids, all of the Palvidos, because that's my maiden name.
Okay.
And we were going to go back to where it kind of, as far as back as I could trace it to, where we started from. So that was going to be our dream trip, and then COVID killed
COVID.
it. And now,
COVID shot it down.
France, I think is they're iffy about whether you can travel or not travel, and not I got some Texan rednecks in my family, and they all don't get vaccinated, so I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
need to get
We
it back
were
to where
we were in
here.
France back in October, and I'm dead serious when I tell you now they've eased it up since, is what I've been told. But we were in
Oh well,
France,
that's good.
and when we were there, you did not do any. You didn't get a prescription filled without a vaccination card. You didn't buy groceries without a vaccination card. You didn't eat at a restaurant without a vaccination card.
Yeah,
You could
exactly right.
the only thing you could basically do was stay in your house or walk down the street. And of course, they had like a 90, I don't know, it was 90 something percent vaccination rate. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
So yeah, well, awesome, that's great. And I'll tell you, some of those off the beaten path towns in France
yeah,
is really just where all the magic happens. And I'll
yeah.
tell you and the listeners a quick story. But my wife and I, when we were there, we went to a little town. I think it was called Bargemont in France, and it was a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. I think I want to say it was a little bit northwest of where we were staying in Nice or Monaco, right in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And we drove up there. We got there really early because we were still on U.S. time, right? So we got
Mm-hmm.
there like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., something like that. So we go into the little coffee shop, and guys serving croissants and whatever. And there's all the little town coffee drinkers or whatever just sitting in there, just all babbling away, talking in French, which I didn't understand a single word except for we. And then all of a sudden, so we sat there a couple of hours and ate our croissants and whatever, and we went down, walked through the town and everything. We come back at like 11:30 or something. Well, then now the coffee shop is transitioned immediately into like a bar. Okay. So like
Wow.
the coffee drinkers, and this is noon. This is like around noon, like lunchtime. So the coffee drinkers who were there in the morning, then they just start drinking beers, and I was like, wow, this is my kind of place. I could get used to this.
Exactly
Then they
right.
take a nap at 1 o'clock from 1 to 3. They close, and I was like, "Golly, I really need this. I need this in my life." So, anyway, Amy, tell the listeners how they can reach out to you and get more information. I know there's going to be some out there that are probably interested in hearing more about your fund directly
Mm-hmm.
from you, and
Yep.
have some very specific questions. So, how can the listeners reach out to you?
My website's the best way. You can book a call with me, and you can check out our investments, and you can check out more about me. And my website is TM, the number one, properties.com. So it's T as in Tom, M as in Mary, the number one, properties, plural,
Okay, properties
properties.com.
plural. Yep.
Yep.
Awesome. Well,
Properties.com.
thank you so much for your time. And I want to
Sure.
thank everybody for listening, and go check Amy out, go to her website, see what she has to offer, because I can guarantee you that it will be worth your time, especially if you're interested or looking for a fund that can, from the sounds of it, can start paying a pref immediately. And then you can, at that point, be in all kinds of moves. So go check Amy out. Amy, thanks again.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.